And we are live.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Protege Parenting at Twitch channel. I'm Josh. This is my wife Jessica. We have 5 kids, live in Indianola, um, out in on an acreage in the country. And one thing we wanted to do on our stream today is kind of talk about our favorite books in parenting. I think the name Protege Parenting, when I came up with that, I thought, we want to build a lot of proteges, but also see ourselves as proteges. It's something that I think is important. Always keeping just kind of an open mindset to always improving, always getting better, always doing. There's always things to learn. One of my favorite quotes is, I think it. I don't think it's his exact quote because it's applied in a couple different areas, but somebody told me, you're the day you think you're a great dad is the day you stop becoming one, and so I think that's super important to just always have that mindset to be, looking into other people, other resources, other things that can help us be better parents. So. Um, we're going to kick it off here with a couple of our favorite books. Just kind of talk about why we liked them, maybe how it changed our parenting, what was good about it. Maybe ask each other some questions too. I don't know. So we'll just kind of get into it here. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. Any books yourself that you feel like really helped you be a parent that I might be missing too. Again, I'm always trying to get better as well. So um, just looking for some stuff like that.
Right?
Anything you
Learning
got?
learning is not a one-time thing, right? Always growing and always learning as a person. So helps us to be a better person.
Yeah. My first book here. So I got this one. I figured this was a great one to start with. It's called "Dude, You're Gonna Be a Dad." Um, this book, I actually did read it before as Jessica was pregnant with our firstborn Ethan. Um, it definitely is meant to be kind of on that front. I mean, if you can see here, it says how to get both of you through the next 9 months. So it is kind of more geared for first-time fathers and kind of things that might be in oncoming for just things upcoming. I mean, the chapters in this, if I bring in here, so it kind of goes through the life cycle of a pregnancy. Essentially, really, you've got the first trimester, and everything from like about conception too. So even if you have some issues with that, finding out how to talk to family and friends about it, spilling the beans they call it. Chapter 2 is taking care of her, which I thought this was a great chapter. Things do shift, things do kind of shift when through pregnancy. I think it's different for everyone. We've got friends, a lot of friends with kids and different amount of kids, and um, everybody's pregnancy and everybody's situation I think is different. Whether the dad is working a night shift, whether the mom is holding a job still or not. I was in the military. That obviously adds a lot of things too. So I think. I really like that chapter, taking care of her, because things they do kind of shift in a way, right? I mean, as we've never been ones to believe in like roles specifically, or not roles, but we don't keep track of things. So there's
Right.
no, well,
Like score.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's no,
keeping
okay, I
schedules.
did the dishes, so you're taking out the trash, right? We view it as a family affair. But when Jessica is sick and not feeling well, and things are different for her, there's no reason as a man we can't step up and do a little bit extra. And I think that um, that's always a good thing on that front.
I think this sounds like a good book for guys to read. As a woman being pregnant, you obviously there's tons of books out there for women. And also you can speak to a lot of times you can speak to the women in your life who have had babies and learn a lot through them. But for men, this is a foreign it's a foreign territory. So obviously I didn't read this book, but it sounds like a good option for a guy who lady is expecting and needs a little bit more info.
It is a good point, like saying it's a foreign place for guys too. I think a lot of emphasis is on the woman, which is obviously a huge thing of physical changes, but also the man feeling a little lost. I think most of the time we're pretty into it, right? Like you're obviously excited. The first kid is excited. Maybe in some cases it's not, right? If it's unplanned or a surprise, or you're not sure what that's going to look like for you. But I think that's something that the men often get sort of left behind in that talk, right? It's an awesome thing. All the women are focused on it, congratulating the women. What do you need? We can, bring meals, or oh, we'll help you do this and that, and nobody really focuses on what the man needs. And I think this does a great job of kind of playing into that and really being like, okay, here's how it's going to be like for you, and here's how you can step up in those certain ways. So that's always good. I mean, even chapter 7, things to squeeze in before the baby squeezes out. Just talking about kind of making a budget, which is huge. We've actually had a lot of people come to us with, how do you prepare for to have kids? How do you
Right.
budget for things? How do you know how much they're going to cost? The short answer to that is you don't know how much they're going to cost, right? Each birth is
Yeah.
different. Each hospital bill is different. The medical needs of each child are different. The woman's recovery is going to be different. So, that's tough. But there's obviously some good, like, foundations. I think that's one thing we've found as our situations change. Just the foundations are always going to be the same. The basics. I mean, I was in the military when was active duty when our first son was born, and that obviously we didn't make very much money in the military. And then after I got out of the military, I went straight to college. Worked nights and weekends. I mean, we didn't really have anything extra. I was fixing everything that happened on the vehicle myself, and so there were times when we were getting by $20, right? But that foundation of what we do, that $20 hasn't changed from when we have extra now. It's always the same foundation, and just having a plan for that, I think, and that's just some of our approach to finances.
Well, that was super helpful to know that I was financially cared for. And that was one less thing for me to have to worry about with carrying pregnancies. And even what was it, with our third or fourth pregnancy, you actually lost your job, and then lost a job too after our fourth baby, before we adopted our fifth child. And so just knowing that we had a foundation of how to steward our money well, even when you lost a job, we still felt secure. I still felt secure knowing that we were sticking to a budget. And so I'm assuming that chapter affected that a little bit for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like, again, that's sort of in the man getting maybe not enough tension from today's society, when it's like, okay, you're pregnant, and there's obviously a lot on the woman, not putting that down, but yet the man, like,
Mm, for sure.
that's a lot. As someone who provides for my family, like, that's super nerve-wracking. What if something, okay, we have enough money, but what if something goes wrong at the hospital? What if there's a special need that we didn't plan for? What if
Right.
what, and then,
What if
okay,
you
what,
lose your job?
yeah, you lose your job, or what,
Right.
what if there's a medical emergency, a car accident right after the birth, or something that, okay, I have enough money for this, but I don't have any money for what's coming next. So
Right.
I think that's definitely something, as a man, if you need help budgeting, reach out. Financials, hot topic today. We personally hate the way American finances and money and marketing and consumerism is today. So there's a way to be smart and to be safe. No matter how much you make, you can do it. I always like the saying, yeah, if you wait until you're ready, it'll never happen, right? Because we've heard from a lot of people like, oh, we're just waiting to have X amount of money, or be so financially set, or have these goals, and it's like you'll never get there, because there's always
Mm-mm.
something in life.
There's
So
always something. Yeah.
yeah. Even then, some of the ending of the book, like visitation policies, where do I fit in? Where does dad fit in? Right. Like, that's a weird thing that not a lot of people talk about too, seeing the mom and the baby, having that bonding time and doing things, but where does the dad fit in? How do I become valuable? Right. What do I mean to my child? And that really hit home with me with our daughter, our second child. She didn't like me the first few months. She wanted mom, and she wanted only mom, and so I had to navigate those kind of things, and I think we've worked it out now. I think she likes me now, but
For sure.
just something that nobody ever talked to me about, really. How to navigate that kind of stuff, and so this one's definitely a good one. Again, it's called "Dude, You're Gonna Be a Dad." Don't know where you can find it, but I'm sure you can find it out there. I'm not
Amazon.
affiliated.
Let's
Yeah, I'm
be
sure
real.
Amazon probably
I'm
on
sure
there.
Amazon has it.
Yeah, I mean, none of these books, we're not affiliated with any of these either, so we don't
No.
make any money. off of these. There's no motivation for us to talk about these other than just they were valuable to us.
Yeah.
Although I will say, if they are looking for sponsorships, you know where to find us. So,
Right?
do you want to do one? How about you do one next?
What I do on next? Okay. Let's see here. If we're going back to kind of the beginning of having kids and when books were really life-changing in the trenches of little kids, this book here, it's the Risen Motherhood book. Um, Shout out to these ladies. They're actually in Iowa, or at least one of them might be. Not that far from here. And they wrote this incredible gospel filled book just for hope for mothers who just kind of feel like they're drowning in the trenches of diaper changes and tantrums and just trying to make it to the next nap time. And it was just really, really encouraging. Back here and remember some of these things, you know, and you don't the book stands out, but it's been how many years. Um, Here. I think one of the biggest things that I remember about this book was just that it helped me to not feel alone. Every day you wake up and whether you work or you stay at home with your kids all day, every day, it doesn't matter when you're with them, it is all consuming. And this book just really helped me to not feel alone in that the overwhelm that is being with your kids sometimes. Obviously, you love them so much and you want to care for them and do the best job that you can. And so then it's easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself. So just not feeling alone, that was really encouraging to me when I read this book. Oh, trying to think of what else. Oh, they even cover like multiple aspects of just giving all areas of life to God. So even like some of the chapters here are the gospel in our heart attitudes, the gospel in our marriages, the gospel in our postpartum body images, like just struggling with being postpartum and what that looks like, and how does the gospel fit into that, and what does God say about that? Everything from your food choices to your relationships, um, traditions, self care, um, schooling choices. Like they really cover a whole wide variety of um, topics and how to relate them back to what God says about those topics in your motherhood. So it's really encouraging.
Let's see. My next one. This is probably one of my favorite authors ever. Her name is Meg Meeker, and she's a MD, but she started. She has a really cool backstory, and I think her experience lends to some really good book writing. My first, actually, the first book I ever read from her was called "Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters." Just fantastic book talking about how strong fathers are ideal and they're critical for children, especially daughters. She has another one called "Strong Fathers, Strong Sons," and then I think I bought one for you called "Strong Mothers, Strong Sons." It just kind of talks about all those relationships and everything. Um, but her background, she started out as a medical doctor. She was a family physician, so a pediatrician, saw kids and everything. And I don't remember the time frame, but after so long, she moved into like family counseling. So she became more of a psychological and family and child counselor. And so there's just a lot of great stories in these books that she pulls from. You know, like one story that always stuck out to me was she's talking about this boy that she did counseling with. Talks about his dad all the time. His mom and dad were divorced. And this boy comes in, talks about his dad all the time. Doesn't get to see him a bunch because they're divorced. Mom kind of keeps him from his dad. But he says, oh, every summer he takes me fishing, like every weekend when I get to see him and this and that. And so one day the dad finally comes to pick up the boy and from the counseling session. And she's telling him, oh, the boy loves you. Like, keep spending that time with him and everything. He's like, man, I barely see him. It's been a little rough. And she says, well, he loves the fishing trips he do every weekend. And he kind of pauses and he says, what do you mean every weekend? And he's like, I don't think I've taken him fishing. And he goes, oh, well, actually, you know what? We did go once last summer. And she said it just stuck out to her because children, they pick up on those positive memories and it's just ingrained in their brain. And I think as a dad, that helps me really just kind of slow down with life and then remember, like, I'm busy. I got so much going on. I've been busy with work. I got stuff going on outside or with the house or with personal things. And then it's like I get done, I come out of my office and all five of my kids want my time. And I always remember that it's like, I'm never going to regret that. And that those small moments are just going to be ingrained into our children's lives forever. And um, those positive memories always take a good spot in their minds, and they'll still bring up stuff to these days. Along with the bad ones, those
Right.
the bad memories, or the what was it? Ethan was like 4 years old when I dropped an egg on the ground and made a big mess, and he still reminds me of it now, like 10 years later.
Oh, you
So
really do remember those, either like one really good thing or one really bad thing, and then don't remember anything else.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this specific book called "You've Got This," it just kind of focuses on like new dads again. So um, the subtitle is "Unlocking the Hero Within," and I really think that's kind of cool. It's my opinion that a lot of men just don't step up for their families today. They're kind of passive fathers, and I think this really exemplifies her desire for men. Just that the family needs a hero.
Mhm.
Families need a man who's going to be strong. I think when you see rambunctious boys or girls that just kind of they grow up and they're way out of whack. It comes from a passive father, ones that aren't involved, ones that are not doing the right thing. And I think, the way Meg Meeker brings this up is, you've got this. You are a hero. You can be a hero. For some men, that's harder than others. But even for someone like me, who's sort of a more outgoing father and everything, there's still things that are difficult for me just because of my personalities as well, or maybe that we lax on. And so I think she does a great job of really just kind of going through that and saying, here's how every man can be a hero. Here's how every man can be, um, the greatest dad ever. Chapter 4, you aren't your dad. I mean, I think that's a great thing. Um, I had a great relationship with my father, but I know a lot of people that don't, or a lot of people that are afraid of becoming their dad. Or, my dad broke a lot of barriers. He didn't really have a dad. My dad was abandoned when he was 5, and then um, had another father step in a little bit later that was not the greatest father for their family, and so my dad really had to kind of step out and make sure he wasn't his dad. And then I'm building on top of that, right? And I expect my sons to build on top of me and be better than me. So, falling out of those generational sins and traumas um, and bondage and chains is really good. Um,
I have to tell you that our oldest son, Ethan, the other day said to me that he's realized as he's gotten older that he's never met anyone else like dad. And he's talking about you. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, dad has taught us and raised us to be respectful of other people, respectful of other people's things, and he expects us to be that way, and he holds us, accountable for that." And he just said, "I've never met anybody else like that." And he just kind of had this realization, and it was a compliment, total compliment to you. And so, but a lot of that comes from what you were talking about of chains being broken in your dad's family and him teaching and instilling values in you, and then you taking those values and just going one step farther, and trying to grow as a person, and really teach the importance of character and respect, having a good character in our kids. And so, yeah, I also really love Meg. Sorry, I'm on a roll here now. One of the things that she said in there that I thought was really encouraging from a mother's side, and it was in the book that you had recommended. Um, it's probably in the pile of books that we lost. Or the ones that we've given out to somebody. So if you have it, give it back. We're not sure who we gave it to. Anyways, she talks about women giving up and sacrificing those years to be home with their kids when they're young because you're never going to get those back. And one of the things that's what she did. If I remember correctly, tell me if I'm saying that wrong, but I was pretty sure that that was something she did, that she had stayed home with her kids and then went back and got her psychology degree, and or else restarted her career at a later date.
Yeah, I
Um
think you're right. I think
yeah.
she took a break from she was a pediatrician and
Yes.
then took a big break from it and then came
Okay.
back to it or something. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
So
just that stood out. I'm gonna say I think I am right because that just stood out to me. That was something that really stuck with me in that book. And obviously, being a stay at home mom, like I never really had that desire to have a career, but I just had so much respect for her in that decision because that's huge. She is never going to regret spending those years with her kids, even just until they got to school age where she could work during the day and still um, and send them to school and not miss those young years, when she was home with them. So,
yeah, and that's again just a lot of respect for her as an author. Like she
yeah,
walked the walk, you know. I mean, a lot of people too will write books on the way they did it wrong and say, I should have done it this way. I'm advising you, and she's like, no, this is the way I did it, and this is the way I'm telling you you should do it too. So
yeah,
obviously she didn't give up her career and then tell every other woman to stay at home too. And
right.
that's something. Um, that's something just that is out there like a plague right now. People are chasing two income families and they're sending their children to daycares. And if your child's in a daycare for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, like who's actually raising your children? So, um, that's a big topic for me that I feel very strongly in.
Right.
Um,
I'm sure we'll
so to
get to
see
that in
that,
another stream.
yeah, yeah, maybe we'll have
We
a specific
also
video for that itself, huh?
we know there's grace to be given there in situations where this is that is what is the dynamic of certain people's family and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I
we
mean,
can respect that too.
Yeah, I mean,
But
even piggybacking off of that, chapter 6 is focused on the play, not the game. And that's that I think. Oh, this is not the same. This is not the same book. I think it was the dude you're gonna be a dad, or no, it's another one actually. I'm talking about. Anyways, one of these books that we'll
they're
get
all
to.
good.
Yes, they all get to. They talk about things as a team, right? A family as a team perspective. So talking about when you're a team, you have a goal, right? The goal is to win the world championship when you're a team. Um, and so I think when, back to like providing and the finances and men stepping up, that's one of those things, if your wife is having to go to work and your children are having to go to daycare, that's not necessarily all just on the wife, that's on the man too. If you got to work Saturdays, so your kids are being raised in a home where that's healthy for them and that's better for them, that's something you can do that. And, that's part of unlocking the hero within. Everybody's situation is different. Nobody can judge each other. But in the end, what's good for the team, what's best for your team, which is your family under your roof. If somebody at a daycare is raising your kids for 9 hours, 40 to 50 hours a week, that's a lot of time that A, you'll never get back with your children, and B, someone else is instilling values and influencing that child more than you are for the 2 hours at night you see them before bed. So you can be the hero dad. You can go out there, you can make it happen. And even the woman, you can make things happen as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
there's ways we can be creative. We live in America, the land of opportunity. There's no reason not to make it work. So there are ways to do that for
Right.
sure.
Okay, so on that note, women, if you're making that choice and you are going to stay home with your kids, you're probably going to need this book. It says, "Don't make me count to 3." um, this book is really great, but in all honesty, I joke about it, but really being home with your kids, um, that would just be making the most selfless decision to be home with them and to give up that time that may have been a career for you, and maybe even just it's not about a career, maybe it's just even about money, giving up more money or, more luxuries and things like that, but I promise you'll never regret it. This book came at a really good time in my life. I was swimming in 4 kids, who were all at the age of tantrums, and it might even been before we had our 4th baby, and I remember finding out I was pregnant with him and calling Josh and just saying like everybody's crying and I'm crying and that's all we do every day and now there's just going to be like another person crying. And honestly, patience and disciplining our kids has been two things that I have really had to work on. And this book was super, super helpful. It literally says a mom's look at heart oriented discipline. Don't make me count to three. So her whole premise here on the book being named "Don't Make Me Count to Three" is obviously not using that as a tactic when it comes to discipline. Teaching your children to want to obey. No, I don't want to word that right. Teaching your children how to obey, and expecting them to obey, but with biblical principles. So she does discuss everything from, not using the count to three method all the way to when do you possibly need to spank your children? Is that something that we do? What does the Bible say about that? And how do we use that as a tool that is loving and caring towards our children and not just some awful experience that is rooted in anger and impatience, which is much easier said than done. And she backs all of this with scripture, which is really encouraging and just helps you to navigate those um, really tough moments with your kids. And they're usually happening in public. So she
Yeah.
also addresses how to handle that too.
Never fails, right? Never fails. It's always in public.
Yeah, every time, every
I mean,
time.
we definitely have a foundation and a rule for that. I always say, what you do in your house in private is just, kind of blown up in public. And that's not, we're not perfect parents, and our kids are not perfect kids, but I do think when you see how children behave in public, it just really speaks volumes about what you're doing at home.
Hmm.
And there are always times where kids are rowdy or they break the rules. I mean, they're children. We should expect them to break the rules and to push boundaries. But that should only be a very small subset of the time. 15% of the time that you're in public should they be pushing those boundaries, and having you should be having to discipline them. And the other 90% you should be getting compliments and, wow, your children are behaving. And my opinion is it's kind of pathetic how many compliments that we get, because it just means that other people's children are that unruly in public, and so
Right.
part of that
It's not necessarily
is
like a, yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's expected of children that they're going to be terrible and not fun to
Right.
be around, and
Right.
that's
Thank
not
you.
okay. That's not the right way to do it.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you.
and a lot of our training and principles and foundations for parenting is focusing on that heart, like Jessica's talking about, where um sometimes the situations might be really difficult, but we're trying to focus on, okay, what's best for the child's heart. How are we going to make them a better person throughout this? Not always just like what's the right decision to make for the situation, but who's having a big heart issue. There's
It's
sometimes
like,
we've flip-flopped discipline, or we've changed our minds on some certain things because one of them is having a really big heart issue, and we need to deal with that rather than the discipline for whatever
right.
happened there, and addressing that. So um
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, and
like,
I think that kind
mhm.
of tees up my next book. It's the Bringing Up Boys by Dr. James Dobson. I think this one's fairly popular. This says over 1 million copies sold, but that was back in, let me
Oh
see when this is,
Lord.
from 2001. So it's a little bit older book, but I think again it's the foundation, the principles of things. Um, this one is great. It also hits a lot of things that people would typically shy away from. So there's chapters here on predators, discipline, homosexuality, mothers and sons, wounded spirits, just all kinds of different things that uh, men were supposed to be tough, and boys are tough. Um, but those all of those topics should not be shied away from. We should be having those topics with our boys to make them into men, because as all of you fathers and men know, the world is not an easy place. And so um, we shouldn't be sheltering our children from all of these topics as a whole. We need to shelter them from stuff they're not old enough to see or to talk about yet, but In a sense, all of these things are things that they're going to come across in their life, and if you don't prepare them for those things, you're only setting them up for failure. You know, I was homeschooled, and I saw a lot of my friends that were over sheltered, were never around alcohol, never around drugs, never talked to about that, never talked to, the guys were never taught about women, and their sexuality. And as soon as they graduated and got free essentially and were exposed to the world, they didn't know how to control it. And some of them spiraled off the worse, even more than myself, who was, pretty rambunctious and out there teen, always looking to get into trouble. Um, some of those people are way worse off than myself, just because their parents, as they were younger, they avoided all the important stuff instead of actually teaching their children how to handle that. So we're very big on that. We don't shy away from any topics. Um, we never lie to our children. I
Mhm.
never want, that even goes for Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy. How the moon works, right? Like, why is the moon in orbit? When they're 3 years old,
Mhm.
I'm telling them the right answer to that, because
Right.
I never want my kids to think that I will ever lie to them or ever set them up for failure.
The earth is round.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, if their parents are telling them that, then we got more issues, and yeah, well, the simple book isn't gonna fix that.
I'm just
Uh,
kidding.
but I mean, no, really, if you're telling your kid Santa's real for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then after that you reveal to, oh, that wasn't true. We were just telling you. What else are they gonna? They're not gonna take your word
Mhm.
for anything. They don't think mom and dad are honest. You lied to them about something stupid as a fairy tale character. Why would they trust you with something serious? So
Okay,
we personally don't do that.
I don't know how much you know about the tooth fairy situation over here though, because I am the tooth fairy, but my I've always just been super transparent about it. I've been like the tooth fairy, and they're always like, "Is it you?" And I'm like, so it's kind of in this joke, and just I've made it more like a mystery, I guess. But maybe I need to rethink that. Maybe I need to pray about that conviction a little bit of like whether or not I am crossing a line there. But I think ultimately what you're doing at home will reflect what is going on outside. And so if you can just keep that communication open and just keep talking to your kids. I also think a big thing that we try to do is to be proactive parents and not reactive. And so just to Josh's point, having those conversations ahead of time, really talking to our kids about um, anything and everything. When the time is right, and being intentional about how much can they um how much can they carry, is this too heavy for them, is this too weighty of a topic for them to carry now at whatever age. And then if it is too weighty, just being truthful um in our words and being careful with them, not to lie, but to say, hey, someday we will explain that more to you, but for now this is all you need to know.
Yeah.
And when you build that trust with your kids like that, then they can rest easy. And we see that where they just rest easy and they go, okay, yeah, I trust that you will talk to me about that and you will tell me about those things when I'm ready.
Yeah, I think it's also important for the approachability too. Like,
Mhm.
my kids know that we
Absolutely.
are a completely open books. I can never, there's no topic that isn't off limits to them. I'm going to talk to them about cigars and, um, alcohol. And we had a situation, we had to talk to them about suicide too, and
Yeah.
that's just life. That all is a part of life. They're going to deal with those things the rest of their lives. And so when the time is right that we can start to prepare them for that, we do. And then, like we said, that also just makes us approachable.
Mhm.
y- I I I hold that in high value, that my children, Ethan's 13. He's starting to hang out more with his baseball friends and friends from other parts of the
Sources.
neighborhood and sources. and
Yeah.
and I told him the other day, I said, hey, you're going over to a friend's house for a Friday night until late, and we'll pick you up. And you're getting to that part where you're going to have to start making choices on your own. You're with people that I don't know. Well, we know them, but
Yeah.
you're with people that we don't know them that well, and you're going to come across some challenges as you become your own man. And if you ever need to call me or talk to me or bring up something, you no hesitation there. Do it and be strong. And
We're grateful. They just played hide and go seek in the neighborhood.
that we know
I
of.
just yeah, that we know of. Yeah, really.
I
Uh,
was 13 as well. I mean,
oh, and
that's
did
why
you
I
play
make
hide
those
and go
comments,
seek?
right? Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
no,
yeah,
hold on,
yeah.
hold on. This
Okay.
is a good
All right.
segue for
You're
my
up.
book here. Okay, so with that, I want to say everything, backing everything that Josh just said with the fact that we take all of what we just said and it is all supported and backed by the Bible and the Word of God. And so when we talk to our kids about these topics, when we talk to them about things like we had to approach the topic of suicide, like that's a huge topic, or I can't remember all the other ones you mentioned. Any of those topics, um, we are using the Bible, we're using the Word of God to um like as a lens of how we have those conversations. So, if you need to know more about that, this book is really, really awesome. This is called the Mama Bear Apologetics book. She covers so many topics. Shout out to Hillary Morgan Ferrer. You are a great author. This is a great book. This was such a good book. And what's cool is I didn't bring it down here with me, but it does come with a study guide with it. I will say I do feel like this is it's definitely more of a mother approach, or like a directed for moms. But as a dad, you could definitely read this too because there's so much good stuff in here. And let me up here and kind of pull up some of the topics that she covers. Um, mm, so basically, her premise of this book is teaching your children to use the Bible, the Word of God, as a lens to view the world. So she teaches this whole like chew and spit method where your children have received some sort of worldly information and they can chew on it and take it to the Bible and wrestle with it. And then they can spit it out if it is not aligning with the truth of God. And so some of the topics that she covers is self-helpism, like the obsession with self-help, naturalism, let's see else here, postmodernism, moral relativism. These are very large words that I would not have necessarily known what that meant. Emotionalism, pluralism, new spirituality, Marxism. She even covers that. She even covers like feminism, all these topics. And she runs them through the lens that is the Bible and talks about these topics in detail, and what the Bible says about them. So this is an incredible book. Let me hold it over here. Um, it just will help you to approach these topics with your kids, um, and to teach them how to approach these topics because they're out there in the world. They're out there in the world, and there's a lot of it going on. And yeah, if they don't have any kind of foundation of how to um, handle those topics, then you're going to be kind of lost, which is a lot of the world. So, all right, there we go. Done with that
Uh,
one.
we'll see. My next one. This one's called "Take Back Your Family." I think this one's relatively new. Actually, I had someone give me
Yeah, I think so
this
too.
book a couple of years ago, maybe 2021. Yeah. So, um, essentially, this is really a book that is like totally against the American nuclear ideal family, which I really, again, I think there's a lot of gaps in the way us Americans sort of live our lives and lead our families, or don't lead our families. And so this book is really cool, just talking about, taking back your family. So, taking charge of that, kind of what I was talking about earlier, just being the hero as a man. It's definitely, I think it's definitely geared towards men. I could see women reading it though, just for the, again, the kind of the basics and the foundation of things that this book sort of lays out that are this is the book, chapter 5, why teams are the way to go. So he goes into what is a team, and how do teams function normally, and so why your family needs to function as a team, and you as the father are in charge of that, right? You're rallying the team, you're the manager, you're calling the pitches, you're telling everybody where they need to play, what's right and what's wrong, how not to cheat at the game. So that's great.
Yeah, this is a channel that will reference baseball.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yes, big baseball here. Uh, even chapter 10, rhythms and rest. I'm not the greatest at that. I'm kind of a go, go, go person. But, talking about having to set a rhythm with your family, um, how to get into things with each other in the busy seasons and how to rest with each other on the vacations and in the slow times. Just really kind of a cool book that really breaks down kind of the basics of just bringing things back under your roof, which I think is totally lost these days. As an American culture, we tend to focus on the consumerism, owning the biggest house. And again, that comes back to, double income families. The woman's out there working so they can own a $500,000 house. And then they complain about how much daycare costs. And it's like, go downsize your house by half so that your wife can stay home with your children and that you can actually build your family. And as a man, you're in charge of that. Again, the consumerism and debt.
They pay off your debt.
Yeah,
That's how, yeah.
yeah, just you have to drive a nice looking car, and they advertise everything. They advertise everything nowadays by the monthly payment. You don't even see the price of everything. And if you saw the price that you eventually pay after the 30 years on a house or
Hmm.
the 72 months on a vehicle, it's just absolutely outrageous. It's bank robbery, and that's why banks and car dealerships make so much money. So. They know all these people are trying to keep up with the Joneses, and they want, the American. We're so into marketing and all that stuff, and so this book, taking back your family or take back your family rather, really focuses on let's bring it back under your roof. What's important under your roof, and especially with the children that you only have so much limited time with them. You got a very small part of your life that you're preparing them to go out into the world and do things themselves, and so how you exemplify that to your kids and how you raise them is a big thing. So
I really like the idea of our family being a team. I think that's huge. I have not read that book, but I feel like we do that pretty well in a lot of areas.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, well, sports season just started a couple weeks ago,
yeah,
and we're
we
running.
really
You
well.
got 5 kids in sports. We're doing everything as a team. We're
Okay.
all going to each other's games, and it's a little crazy. I know some people that don't really let their kids play sports because it takes up too much of their evenings and nights, and they're running around crazy. But we always say like when we're running around crazy, we're doing it as a family. Like
But
we're all
even
together.
that, if they decide not to do that, then that's their team, right? Like if they're being at home as a team in that way, like I don't know if I
I think fair enough. I
necessarily think
mean,
that's a bad
I suppose if they
thing.
decide that as a team to do that, and that's what the man,
They're
is leading
listen,
his family. At least the man is
right.
leading his family rather than just letting him do whatever, and
Right.
he's
And if
off
there's
chasing
a
something on his own. So that's still a team approach. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Also we're 7 people, so we probably are a team of some sort. What sports team has 7 people? Any of them? Any
Mm,
sport is what I should say.
basketball, you do 5
That's why there you go.
on the court.
We have a basketball team. We have a couple subs in case. Our youngest daughter is gonna be really tall, so maybe
She's
she'll
the only
actually
one.
she's the only one. Yeah.
She's the only one.
Okay,
My turn or
speaking of
your
her
turn?
no, it's my turn. And that's a perfect segue. Look, I'm like the queen of segues tonight. Okay. This book is called The Connected Child. How come you didn't bring this book out?
I have my. It
This book
wasn't one of my favorites.
this
It's
book
it's
did
very
not
good.
impact Josh in the way that it impacted me. This book made me realize that I am very emotionally immature, which is a whole nother topic, but it was really good. And okay, so sorry, let me start over. Did I already say the title? This one's called The Connected Child. I think I already said it. So after we had our fourth baby, we thought we were done, and God had other plans and ended up telling us that we were going to adopt. We followed along on that journey, adopted our fifth child, little girl from Bulgaria, which is in Europe, in case you're wondering. We weren't sure when we first heard it. Anyways, we couldn't remember. Um, so through adopting, we were asked to do a lot of training. There was a lot of recommendations for books, things like that to read. So Josh, of course, read all the books, and I read one book because even though it looks like I've read a lot of books, I'm not as much of a reader as Josh is. I'm more of an audiobook listener, which has caused me actually to helped me to read a lot of books or listen to a lot of books now. But anyways, this book was really helpful in understanding how when a child comes from adoption and a broken family, or just any kind of broken family, that there has to be the attachment to the parents was severed, and therefore trauma was caused because of that, obviously. And so new attachments have to be formed, which is possible, but also just really hard and unnatural, honestly, because we are not her biological parents. Um, in all other senses, we are her parents, but biologically, we are not. And so this book just was really, really helpful um, in teaching me about that. And along that journey, that also encouraged you to work through some of your emotional um, maturity. And I'm very grateful for this book, but
Yeah, I wouldn't say
it's
I didn't include it in mine because I wouldn't say it was one of my favorites. I also don't know how applicable it is because it is sort of um I liked it in the sense that it really does it focuses on special needs children and those abandoned, gone through trauma, foster care, adoption, things like that. But uh, in a sense, there's also very good concepts and very good foundations again in that book that you can apply to any children. I mean, each one of our five kids is all different, and so
yeah,
that book there are definitely a lot of principles in there that I think can transfer over to children that weren't even dealing with abandonment issues. So
yeah,
it's definitely a good book for sure.
yeah. Got apples and oranges. We're
Yep.
not just a basketball team, we're also a fruit salad. So
My next book is kind of an interesting one, a little bit different, but I actually enjoy this one. One of my coworkers recommended this to me last year, year or two ago. I will say we already had been doing a lot of what was in here, but there were some great concept, some good new stuff, little tidbits that I learned. It's not huge, but it's called The Opposite of Spoiled. And rate the subtitle: Raising Kids Who Are Grounded, Generous, and Smart About Money. So I really like this just in the sense that, like I said, there was already a lot of stuff here that we're already doing with our kids. We already believe in and try to ingrain in them. But also a lot of good stuff that I hadn't thought of or I wasn't sure of. There's a lot of stuff where like, well, we think this is right. We're going to kind of do this, and then this either kind of strengthen that belief. Go, oh yeah, that's a good point on maybe why we should do that. We kind of thought it was the right thing, but weren't 100% sure why. So this was great, but as you can kind of see on the cover there, they have like a give, save, and spend jar. So that's exactly what we've been doing with our children. We started allowances several years ago, and then every week they're supposed to give me 10% for a giving fund, and they're supposed to give me 10% for saving fund. I have no idea what we're saving for, no idea what those savings are going for, but against the principle that I'm making my kids set aside money that I give them. So I hand them everything of their allowance, and then I say, okay, now you give me back the money of this week that's owed for those two things. And that's I think that's been huge because them handling that cash and then saying, okay, I'm giving it to you. It's not like, okay, I don't think it would be the same if I were to give them, okay, here's your allowance minus what you owed me back, right? I think that would kind of defeat the purpose. So we're exchanging that money, they're giving it back to us. And then every so often, whenever they sort of build up enough that their giving is something worth giving to someone, then we just say, okay, who do you think you're supposed to give to? Who do you feel led to give to? And that's led to some really cool conversations as well. Um, and I think it's also helped me personally. We kind of we give to people and we have a fund for that, but sometimes it's easy to not be connected to people or not think about that giving and not know where it's supposed to go. And so when I'm kind of have my kids and we're having that conversation every weekend, like we're building up our giving, for someone, like think about who you want to give to. Go, oh yeah, who have I helped out lately, or what do we feel led to give to? And so again, just really good foundational principles that are going to help your children, especially again in today's consumerism market and chasing the big things, right? When Reed wants to buy a Lego set, I say, okay, go get your money, and we go and we count his money, lay it all out there, and I say, okay, if you buy that Lego set, here's the money it's taking. That's what's left, and he'll go, oh. It makes them
Yeah.
think like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I wouldn't. Okay, well maybe I'll think about it.
Well, and
There's
it's a
that
good
principle.
visual because when they get
Yeah.
older, that money's gonna be in the bank. It's gonna be in the bank. It's not gonna be laying right in front of them. And so it'll be a lot easier to view it, or they'll have a foundation of seeing it visually in front of them in cash instead of just a number that's on the screen that says, "Oh, you have this much, now you have that much." 50 doesn't seem that far from 100 when you just look at it as number, but when you see it as a pile of money or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing. What Dave Ramsey, I don't agree with Dave Ramsey on all of his stuff, but one thing he says about credit cards is like it's easier to just swipe rather than count and hand over the money. And
Yeah.
so I think I don't. I think that is especially important to what Reed's, 7 and Rose's, 5 here that we're doing allowances with. That's super, super important to start thinking about that and making them think about their purchases. Another thing we do is we make them think about their purchases before they go out and purchase it, right? So we don't allow impulse buy. So we're out at a store, like, oh, I want that. We say, okay, let's talk about it. Here's the pricing. We go back home, we look at it and say, okay, maybe there's another better price somewhere online, right? Like let's
Right.
price shop. Let's make sure we're spending our money wisely, getting the best bang for our buck. If there's not, I say let's talk about it tomorrow. And then we wake up tomorrow and they go, yeah, I don't know that I really want it, right? And so we're
Mhm.
we're saying, okay, that impulse buying. Um, that's America is so pushing everybody towards marketing and getting stuff in your face, and they want you to impulse buy, they want you to take out debt, and that's just something we're fighting to teach our kids not to do,
Right.
to grow up and be grounded in their finances. And so this book really helps do that. I appreciate that.
That book came at a really good time too. I remember our oldest wanting this is probably 5 years ago, something like that when you read it. And I remember him wanting money and wanting to earn money and asking me if he can do jobs. And I was really struggling with what jobs to have him do that were outside of just the whole idea that we're a team and we take care of our house all together. And we were never really paying our kids to do their chores. There was just chores that were expected and things that we were just expected to help with, regardless of whether or not you were getting paid. Because kind of back to that whole like we're a team, we're all taking care of our house mindset. And so he was asking me a lot about that. And I was really struggling with which jobs to give him, how much to pay him, and I was talking to Josh about it a lot. And then one day he just came to me and was like, "I read this book. Here's how we're gonna approach money with the kids." And you just totally took that over, which was huge. Which fits with a lot of our other book conversations, especially regarding men and just leading our home and kind of taking that upon yourself to teach our kids. And that just was such a blessing to me because it just freed me from the stress of trying to figure that out, and how to do that.
I think some of the stuff that I changed, or maybe not changed, that some of the stuff that I added after reading this book was like he really talks big about um, being open with your kids about your finances too, and
Oh,
being
yeah.
part of purchases. So, we've involved, we've taken I think maybe two vacations since I've read this book, and we involve the kids in it. I'd
Oh,
pop
probably
up,
like 4 now, babe. Probably like 4
I
vacations.
think I just read this last year, but I
Oh,
mean,
really? Okay.
the point is that like I'm very organized when we take a trip. I have a spreadsheet of all the different expenses that we're gonna have, the bookings, potential expenses, extras, anything like that. Um, and then we've started to sit down with the kids and say, okay, here's the trip. Do we want to go out to eat or do we want to go do this? And so the kids then, when we're on that trip and they go, oh, how come we can't go out to eat? It's like, hey, do you remember for 7 of us it cost $200, and instead we went and did
Yeah.
this cave exploration for $200, right? All 7 of us got into a cave and were able to go through that tour, which they absolutely loved. And so then they're
Right.
like, oh, that's right, okay, yeah, we're happy with lunch out here, right? And so um, it's again communicating to them and showing them the ins and outs of it. I mean they don't know how much money we have in our bank accounts, but any little bit of adding them to it, even with sports season, like, we tell them, all right, for 5 of you for cleats, if we go spend brand new, that's $500, right? So we're going to play it against sports, and you're going to pick one out from the shelf,
Mhm.
and we go buy all of those things, or my son with a bat, right? It's like every year you need a new bat because he gets bigger and stronger, and then the rules change.
Yeah, the
I'm not spending
requirements.
300 bucks a year on a bat. We're gonna go buy somebody else's for 50 bucks off Facebook.
Yeah.
And he's learned to appreciate that. I think all the kids have learned to appreciate that, and then they also look at things and go, "Whoa, that's expensive," or "Wow, that's a lot of money." And I think that all comes from us having those conversations with them, um, showing them those things. I don't know that we've necessarily gone over the family budget like monthly, but anytime we make big
No.
purchases or go through stuff, I try to include them in that. We try to talk about certain things. Um, even the other day, I've been talking about, it's baseball season now, and the Cubs are back on. And to watch the Cubs games, I have to buy Marquee Network now. It's $20 a month. But I was just talking to Ethan, and I'm like, man, I really want to watch the Cubs, but you guys are busy, and I don't know if I want to spend my allowance on it. And he was like, your allowance, you're going to spend your allowance on watching the Cubs game? I said, well, yeah, that's not a need. That shouldn't
Mhm.
come out of the family budget. That should be mine. I like watching the Cubs. If I'm gonna pay $20 a month, that's coming out of my allowance fund.
Yeah.
And so just stuff like that. That's going to raise my son when he's raising his family, thinking about how is he spending his money, and taking care of his family. So those are just good conversations to have.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't remember. I think there's other chapters in here. Why kids should work. That's obviously a good one. Working for your money, earning it.
Yeah.
How much is enough? I mean, that's a good conversation for all of us, right? We've talked about that a couple of times already. Oh yeah, chapter 5. Are we raising materialistic kids? That's the other
Mm.
thing, right? Um, and I think that uh, there's a great TED talk out there about giving and being grateful. How much that makes us better people. Just when we give and we find ways to be grateful and we find ways to give our time back, how much better people we are. And I think that's something we want to exemplify with our kids too, is like raising them to be giving people and also feel that at a young age, and not to follow into it later in life, but to realize like growing up, no, I need to give to people. We're called to do that.
Right.
We're so overly blessed more than most people, so there's no reason we can't be giving back, and that's going to make our children better people, looking out for others and such, and doing that. So, there's that. Um,
I think it's easy to, as Christians too, to take the verse about not, flaunting your giving, and obviously that's incredibly important, and that's a verse that needs to be, um, uh, on your heart. But, um, when you when you take that too far where you don't share that with your kids, from a humble posture, then you lose the chance to teach them about that. So, I do think that there's ways to teach them about giving, um, which obviously giving should be from a humble heart. If you're giving not from that, then it's not a good place. But the point is that don't let that verse stop you from telling your kids about it and talking to them about it and encouraging them to give too, because I think ultimately they they learn that stuff from you. So it's important. I don't have any more physical books, but it looks like you've got another one. I've got a couple audiobooks that I could talk about, but let's go to this one.
yeah, my last one here is sort of a bonus one. Not applicable to all parents, but it was fantastically. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now.
It is now.
Fantastically written. Parenting your internationally adopted child, and this one is thick. So again, when we went through our adoption journey, there were a lot of requirements for us from a training perspective. Just the way they do things, they require you to kind of get some education on adopting children, and they really mean well. They want to prevent failed adoptions and readoptions, but um, it also is just kind of repetitive, and there's some things in there that weren't really applicable to our situation. And then Rosa, our adopted child, this book, I mean, it covers just about everything you need to know. And again, if you can't tell by now in this hour that we've been talking, we're really big on the heart issues and the foundation and the basics. This book does a fantastic job at laying foundations, laying basics, really getting into that stuff, about like why your child may act like that. And then, for example, it talks about like building on things. So there are certain actions with your child, right? Like one thing for us is we're very big on obedience. And so this book talks about your adopted child and where to start with that obedience. So obviously when we have when we're bringing a 2.5-year old home from a different country with special needs that doesn't speak the same
Doesn't speak
language as us,
English, yeah.
we cannot have the same expectations as our children, but they can be obedient. And so this book does a great job of like laying out, okay, here's how you start that, right? Here's how you go down that process. We don't abandon it. We don't say, oh, it's okay for that child to not be obedient. Their situation was terrible. No, that's not acceptable. Their situation is not great, but they live in the same world as the rest of my kids do. They're going to be required to be obedient. And so it starts with like, here's how you build that foundation, and then the next chapter is okay. Once you've hit this threshold and this benchmark, now it's time to do a little bit better, right? And to eventually get them to that point where they can be on the same level as your biological children. So I absolutely loved that approach. That you can eventually get there, and they build on it. A lot of these adoption and resource books and training that we did, they're not bad books, but they're not all encompassing. So it's like, okay, that was a great book. It was short,
This one
even
is
even
kind of
like
like
this one
the
is kind of, it's a little bit short, great foundation, great basis. But then it's like, okay, once I do that, then what's next? Right? And so a lot of those books I feel like were open ended, as opposed to this big thick one that just builds and builds and builds. It gives you years of success, and I really like that approach. So that's kind of why I gave this one as a bonus book. I think it'd be fantastic, really, for anyone to read. I mean, um, even they talk about like cultural and ethnic identity for young children. Like that's, even if I feel like that's relevant, even if you have biological children that are the same. Like we're Caucasian and all of our children are Caucasian, but to have those racial and ethnic conversations with our children, understand that is still a good thing. So I don't know that I would recommend people that don't have adopted children or to read this, but they were just great topics in this book, great depth. Um, Definitely wanted to add it in here.
it might even be, or I should ask you, is it a good option for someone who has, like, an adopted niece or nephew or fa like, friends of theirs that are close that have adopted? Is that maybe a little too far out?
No, I mean,
Just to help to
it's
understand that family and what they
yeah.
might be going through and supporting them?
The only caveat I would say is that it's a large book, so to
Right?
just
It's a lot
recommend
of
it to
time.
some, 500 or
Yeah.
420 some pages just for people of family members for it. The best thing I did though was kind of share this stuff. I think I shared a lot of this with our family members after Rosa came home. So there was just a lot of stuff that you could tell, like we could tell our family members, they don't quite get it, like they don't understand.
Right.
They're asking us questions, they're doing these and they mean well, right? They don't mean bad, but it was just like there's so much going on there when you bring a little girl home, 2.5 years old with special needs, different language, different cultural background. And so I remember seeing our parents doing things and then being like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It just doesn't click with them, right? That's a lot. And so I think I used stories and advice from this book to kind of help um, talk to them about certain things and to lay that out. And I think it was new space for us, but I had read this book and it was so well encompassed that I was able to relay that to other people in our family to kind of go over that stuff. So um,
Yeah, you
yeah.
like you said, you could tell they didn't get it. There were I feel like it was one way or the other. Either they didn't recognize the things excuse me, they recognize the things that we were seeing in her, or they were almost, um, not scared, but kind of scared to figure out their boundaries with her and just, navigating, her being a part of our family, and it was still happening. It's still happening. It's gotten a lot better. She's been home with us for 2.5 years now, and so
I
it's
mean,
come a
even
long ways, but yeah.
I think like big things were like, okay, we'd start going to family get-togethers, and then we're like, all of a sudden it'd be suddenly like, hey, we're out,
Yeah,
hour and a
we're gonna
half,
leave
2 hours, and they're like, oh, what's wrong? It's like it's nothing's necessarily wrong, but just things are just different for her. We
Yeah.
saw something, we see something. It's time for us to go. Please don't worry about it, or Um,
Right, you guys didn't do anything wrong.
yeah,
Yeah, not it
yeah,
was never
or,
anything on
you know,
that. Yeah.
even the hard conversations, we'd have to be like, "Please don't do this with her," or, "Hey, don't do
Yes.
that with her," or, you know, "Let us do this, don't." And again, they always mean well, but able to come back to this book and say, "Hey, this is just a situation. This is how she views it. This is how, is common in these adoptions and these trauma-induced, situations, and so it's nothing on you guys," but, and then that helped them be I think it helped them be very understanding, and I think a lot of that was attributed to this book. I was able to pull my knowledge from, you know, reading that and the advice from that, and just to communicate that with everybody.
Well, and we're just very blessed. All of our family was even when we had to say, "Hey, don't do that," and we were kinda saying, "It's yeah, you might be kind of the problem." Not necessarily the problem, but you're not approaching that in a way that we would like you to just with her, and, they were all so gracious and just, um, understanding and willing to learn, and be open to the fact that the approach had to be different, than just bringing home our biological child and holding them the day that they were born, and bonding with even the grandparents the day that they were born. Um, yeah, I think that's why I say when I said, like, scared almost at their boundaries with them, it was like, "Is she gonna like us? Is she not gonna like us?" Did we give her a hug? Did we not give her a hug? There was a lot to navigate there.
I mean, same things we had to navigate, right?
Oh my
Different
goodness,
aspects.
yes. Yes, we did. We had just already done that for a couple weeks. We had a couple weeks under our belt before that. I don't know. It was good.
Um, I had there's one other book that I don't have a physical copy of. I think I loaned it to someone and don't have it anymore.
Whoever
But
you
it's
are.
definitely one, again, not necessarily a parenting book, but almost like a bonus book that I wanted to mention because it was great for me. I read it. It's called Mindset, by Carol Dweck, and fantastic book by a psychologist, and it really goes into the psychology of, just your mindset as a person. So, she goes into everything from, you know, your job to sports to just personal. Um, one example she uses in the book that I love to kind of tell, or retell from her book that, really kind of exemplifies what the book is about is she talks about like an art class. They brought in all these people that could not draw, just terrible artists, probably just like me. I'm surprised I wasn't in the study. I have no artistic ability, and they bring them into the studio, and within like hours they are drawing these beautiful paintings. I mean, people that probably couldn't barely draw stick figures before, within a couple hours. And she said, the class was about changing their mindset, the way they viewed the art, the way they viewed what they were doing, and then putting it on paper, and the way they just viewed everything. And so that's kind of the background of the book, where she really goes through all of the different things on how, mindset, you can do anything you set your mind to, and the mindset is more important than the actions, even. Which is, as I've gotten older, there's so much more behind that. You know, I was big into fitness and powerlifting, and, been a personal trainer while I was in school. And there's a lot of studies out there that show about the mind muscle connection. So when you're in the gym, they'll have somebody do an exercise, and they'll have, same weight, same reps, same everything, but they'll say, okay, now think about that muscle while you're doing it, and the muscle activation just skyrockets. So just that muscle mind connection, your mindset on, I'm going to work out this muscle and I'm going to do that. Uh, the mind can do incredible things. You know, she uses Michael Jordan, in there as well in that book. You know, he didn't make his freshman team. I mean, the greatest basketball player in the world that ever lived, didn't even make, you know, the first year he tried out for high school. But going into his mindset behind that, and just having the drive to do that. So, I think it relates to parenting a lot, because, parenting to me is a lot of mindset. You know, there's a lot of things that I like to sort of give as tips and tricks, and again, the basics of parenting. Um, you know, for example, like one thing, when, I always encourage Jessica to go on trips or to do girls things, and just get away. I mean, I do guys trips, and I think it's good for her to do it, and I'll have the kids for a weekend. And I remember the first few times where like I was almost like, okay, I'm preparing for a tough weekend, right? And then as I got into the weekend, as I'm, doing all the dishes and laundry and bedtimes and all this stuff, I just realized like this really isn't that big of a deal. Like I'm just doing it, right? It's just whatever. And then as I got onto that, the next trip I remember she was leaving on, I thought, why am I dreading this? Like I'm gonna look forward to this. We're gonna have fun. I'm gonna set up things. And I just remember everything was so different. My mindset, nothing had changed. I was doing the same exact things with more kids probably during
Hmm.
that trip, but
Yeah.
my mindset had changed, and I'd been like, I'm going to enjoy this weekend with my kids. I have nothing to complain about. Like this is fantastic. I get to spend 3 whole days with my kids or whatever. And so even that, has really helped me. Um, one of my biggest things too is I always say for parenting, you should have high standards, low expectations. And what I mean by that is your standards for children should never change. So, I as an adult, if I don't like something at work, I can't throw a fit. I'm gonna get fired. So why is it okay for my child to throw a fit in the store? That's not okay. That's having the same standards. Those high standards have to exist,
Right.
but I have the low expectation that my child is going to throw a fit. And so that's always helped me with my mindset is my standards are high, but I'm always expecting that to happen. If my standards are high, but my expectations are high, I'm gonna be upset. I'm gonna be frustrated. I'm gonna be short tempered when they do throw a fit. If my standards are high, but my expectations are low, go, all right, we're going to the store, but I'm right now, my kids are struggling with throwing a fit. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
I know they're gonna throw a fit. And we're just gonna deal with it, and
You're
it'll happen. So um, things like that have been huge for me in parenting and just that mindset overall.
you're almost expecting it with the with a fit, right?
Yeah,
It's yeah.
yeah. I mean, you have to. I think
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Where does anger come from? It comes from when something doesn't go your way or the way you expect it,
Mhm.
something the way you don't want it. But um, that's another thing with speaking to mindset, like when I have something that I need to step aside to parent my children, my mindset is now, okay, this is something I'm helping my child get better at. I'm making them a better person by setting my time aside to go discipline them or train them on something. Um, instead of being like, oh, this is a burden. Now I gotta take time out of my gaming or my hobby or my working on a dirt bike to go deal with my child. It's, oh, okay, here we go. I have a chance to make my child a better person. That right there will make that such a better situation, calmer, more willing to go do it. Um, Plenty of positive things. I mean, mindset is so huge in everything in life, and even it relates to parenting as well.
Absolutely. I think that's an area that I really struggle. And I mean, we've been married for almost 16 years, and you can nod your head yes because you agree with that. But that's something you've really taught me and encouraged me in is just changing my perspective about it. And I've seen that modeled for 16 years with you, and it's encouraged me, but it's still a daily struggle for me.
Yeah, I mean, it always will be. I think I do pretty well at that, especially because I'm so passionate about a mindset. But I
Yeah.
still so plenty of times that I have to reset myself and remind myself about mindset and the right attitude behind things. So
Mhm.
we always need those reminders.
Well, believe it or not, I feel like there's actually been times where I've been more patient than you have been. Like, wow, this never happens. So, we're just balancing each other out. It's part of that team dynamic, right?
Yeah, yeah. Said it when we started. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So
Mm-mm, no.
um,
Okay, so two of the books that I don't have here well, one of them I listened to, and the other one, we had a physical copy, but also whoever has our physical copy, give it back. Um, just kidding. I actually don't know what happened to it. One of them is To Train Up a Child was a book that we haven't discussed yet, and that's a um just a really really good resource. It's a pretty I like to call it a pretty intense book. The author, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Do you remember his name? It'll come to me.
wasn't that a James Dobson?
No, it's not James Dobson. It's the No Greater Joy Ministries. They have
Oh
a
yeah.
ministry. I can't think. Oh, Michael and Debbie Pearl.
Oh, that's right. The
So
pearls. Yeah,
there we
yeah.
go. Michael Pearl wrote this book. Anyways, it is a very broken down, practical book about training and disciplining your children. Um, he the book is just full of examples. So I met this wife, I met this woman, I met this man. They have a child. This is what their child was doing. Here's how I told them how to handle the situation. Um, here's how to discipline for that. Here's how to train your child um, in obedience in that situation. And they also have a monthly pamphlet brochure type thing that you can sign up for. And it comes and it's just full of stories. It's full of encouraging stories, people who wrote into them asking for help in their marriage, asking for help in with parenting, asking for money advice, things like that. And they have really good resource there too. So that book's a really good one. That one was recommended to us by Josh's parents. It was like the minute we were pregnant, they're like, "You will read this book," which was good. It was life changing. Um, I had never really spent time thinking about disciplining our kids. And I think a lot of that was just because we were young and, you're just excited to have a baby. And it's like, oh, everything's cute and little and this is going to be so fun. And then you have a baby and all your selfishness comes out and you have to change your mindset, like Josh said. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's something to, the discipline and obedience, I think have taken a back seat too in our society. Um, I actually know several people that have told me to my face, like, they don't believe that obedience should be required of children, which I think is just,
Well, it's
not a
sad.
good thing, one of my favorite analogies to use a kid running into the road. I think there's so many things that can relate to as a metaphor. That I mean, again, nobody we can all, and it's easy. It's an easy place to agree because nobody agrees. Nobody thinks their kid should be allowed to run in the road, right? Every single parent goes, "No, my kid should not run into the road."
Right.
So if you don't and a kid doesn't understand that. So when that kid is running towards the road, he does not understand what's going to happen if he runs into that road. So how do you as a parent think that obedience is not required of him at that point, he or she? So obedience starts at that point where, as parents, it's our job to ingrain those foundations, those core morals and what's right into our children. And if we don't do that with requiring obedience of them, it's never going to get put in there. So if we go back to the running out into the road example, that child's running into the road, we demand obedience of them. They have no idea why. As they get older, they'll slowly develop that ability to reason with that and recognize, oh, that
Yeah.
car is moving fast. That's going to hurt. And so it moves from the child being obedient into the child having self-control and the child having understanding, right? If you allow your child to just do whatever they want, that eventually will not lead to self-control. That obedience is what starts
Hmm.
and fosters that, eventual being self-control and understanding those things.
I mean, yeah, being in a parking lot, teaching your kid to stay next to you. I mean, I have witnessed all 5 of our children come into that realization from, like, the stepping, from just being told and expected to obey to stay by us, to growing to where they realize, "Oh, that is a car right there." And actually, that just recently has happened with our youngest daughter. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I really see Rosa. Granted, she's 5, but really more like around a 3-year-old developmental age. And so that totally tracks with around the time that I remember all of our biological kids turning 3 and really starting to realize, oh, wow, that car, there's a car. That car will hit me if I go in, if I step out any farther, if I don't stay close to mom or um, things like that. But a lot of that came with training, and those expectations of obedience.
Yeah, I always tell them. I would say, "Hey, don't run out there. I can't do anything if you're flat. Can't do anything with you." It's a joke, but it's also trying to
Yeah.
make them think about that I'm not just telling them not to run into the street, for no reason, but think about those consequences, and then that slowly like Jessica's talking about, you can kind of tell when that starts to kick in. So, um, obedience should be required of children. That's our job. If if they're not required to be obedient, then we don't really have a job.
Right, you're just
That's
sort of keeping them alive to do what? Feed their flesh.
yeah. I mean, they're born not knowing
I
anything.
mean,
So if we don't
yeah.
require them to follow our guidance, then where are they going to get their guidance from? I don't want my kids getting the guidance from anybody but me.
Mhm.
This world is not going to teach them the right things unless I do. So
Well, and even that, okay, let's say you branch out of getting guidance from you, right? You're allowing that in a safe environment that says, "Hey, this is your grandpa who loves the Lord and has wisdom and, or this is uh someone in our life that we trust and we know." But yeah, ultimately the wisdom is coming from our parents. But just when you step outside of that, you can help them to do that safely. But that goes back to the one book I was talking about, just teaching your kids to know how to seek the truth in the world and not just take everything in as truth. So,
yeah,
good.
well, I mean, again, they don't know what's truth. They don't know what's right or what's wrong. So they require us to teach them that, and then um, as they get older, they recognize it on their own. Goes back to the whole lying thing. If you're gonna tell your kids Santa is real when they're younger, and then they get older and realize it's not real, that just throws everything into chaos for them. How are they supposed to trust you and be obedient and know what you said is right? So, setting those boundaries and saying, "Hey, don't run into that road." And as they recognize, oh, Dad knew what he was talking about back then.
Mhm.
Dad's gonna know what he's talking about from here on out, and it builds that trust and builds just reinforces that obedience. And I think
Mhm.
it translates. When our kids, there've been plenty of situations that I couldn't have prepared for. I didn't know to prepare them for, um, or didn't even cross my mind to train them for. But I have required obedience of them, or I've ingrained the right things in them. And so when they come up against those situations that are unknown, they're able to extrapolate and go, okay, well, Dad taught me what's right on this front, and I know this is right and this is wrong, so maybe it applies to this as well. And they're able to figure that out on their own. That's a great feeling as a parent. There's so much out there. Uh, I remember being frustrated at myself that I didn't teach him like the Pledge of Allegiance. Like we're homeschooled, and like God, what I'm failing as a dad. I'm not teaching the pledge. There's so much out there as parents that we're required to do. But if you teach them the basics, if you teach them the foundation, that will carry over to everything else in their life, and it's going to be beneficial to them.
Yep. They did finally learn it.
Yeah, I still haven't taught him it. I don't think, but
Taught them what?
we play
The
enough baseball. They know the national
Oh, the
anthem at
national
least.
anthem.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was part of one of our school studies. But yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance, I kind of forgot about it. And that is terrible. That's terrible. But we joined a co-op, 3 years ago? We were in it for 1 year and they did it there. And so we're good. They learned it. I don't know if they remember it, but I really should implement that. That would be good. It'd be good. Um, there's a library book from the library that they get that plays the America the Beautiful song, and so I'm pretty sure they know that one now too. That's a good one.
I don't think I have
Um,
any more books. About you?
um,
Any you want to talk about?
no, I guess there was one audiobook that I had listened to, that is, again, along the lines of mm, parenting, motherhood, prob really more motherhood than parenthood. Now I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. Oh, it's, Hard is Not the Same as Bad. And that book, you wanna talk about mindset. Ooh, man. That book was convicting. It's written by Abby Halberstadt. Halberstadt? Oh, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. She has a platform on social media called M is for Mama, and she's a mother of 10 children and has a lot of wisdom. A lot of really good stuff to say. And obviously, I'm assuming, just from the title, you can tell what the book is about. It's got a lot of, um, I don't have it in front of me, obviously, but she covers a lot of really good topics, just in being a parent and how to change your mindset and view your motherhood differently. That just because something is hard, like your child throwing a fit in the store, doesn't mean that it's bad. It just gives it's an opportunity to pour into your children and train them, and it's a good opportunity. So I would highly recommend that one to any of the moms who are just feeling overwhelmed and probably a little lacking in their patience. So because I know that's an area of struggle for me.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, what we said about, or what I said earlier about just viewing every opportunity as a good thing. Like one thing, for example, it's hard to train kids to sit still during a funeral or be quiet during a funeral or visitation or a wedding or something like that, right? But um, those same children are being allowed every Sunday to run around crazy at church and not have to sit in their pews or not have to be quiet while the teaching or praying is going on, So that's a great thing. I've always used church as a great example to make my kids sit still, make them be quiet and listen to me and obey. That way, the one time every few years that we're at a funeral, it's not out of their comfort zone. It's, hey, you can be quiet for 30 minutes while we go through this, and they're obedient and they do it, and it's nothing new to them. The setting is new, but the requirement and that foundation is not new to them.
Yes, I completely. There was a sorry, there was a quote in this book that I was trying to find. A little bit different than I remember. It says motherhood is made up of a million tiny moments for worship. And I think that applies to parenthood. And worship's a little bit different thought process than what you're saying, but really it's a mindset change. So it's tiny little moments, millions of them, to give you an opportunity to worship, to be grateful, to be joyful and thankful that you get the opportunity to train your kids this way. So, yeah. Um, but that also, and maybe you said that, sorry, but everything you did just say, I'm just reiterating that again, it's all of that. Whatever you're doing at home is going to pour out when they're in the world. So, yeah. Um, good stuff. I think that's the last book that I can think of. The really stood out to me.
Okay.
Yeah.